Hello, everybody. Welcome to Scare-A-Thon 2022. I'm Aaron Christensen with Horror 101 with Dr. AC. And the Scare-A-Thon 2022 is benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. The link to donate is below in the description. And we hope that you will make a donation. Today, we're going to be talking about Spiral from the Book of Saw. This is the 9th Saw film. Is once again directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who did Saws 2, 3, and 4. And because we covered the show on his Kicking the Seat podcast, I wanted to have my good friend Ian Simmons joining us for our discussion. How are you, sir?
If we're such good friends, AC, why are you making me revisit Spiral from the Book of Saw?
Because I care. Actually, we did not cover Jigsaw together. That was the one that we left out of the mix. And I won't ask either of us to go to that one. Although I will say that I didn't mind Jigsaw. I thought it was okay. And I was once again kind of impressed by the fact that they were able to keep this John Kramer thing going. And what's different about this one, I mean, among other things, is that John Kramer is nowhere to be found.
He's mentioned, and that's
yes,
yeah. And this is some years after the original saga, as it were.
This is why I have to have you on all the time.
But yeah, it is kind of a neat idea of this copycat potential series of Jigsaw style killings popping up again. Although this is in it feels like this is Los Angeles. Is that right?
I think that's right.
And it's strange because this very much has the same setup as Predator 2, centered around a black cop on like the hottest day of the year in Los Angeles. And all of a sudden there's people showing up being skinned alive. But no, that's pretty much where the fascination ends for me.
Well, I appreciate you taking one for the team and coming on to discuss it. So kind of, I think this will go down in history as that Saw movie with Chris Rock in it.
Yeah.
Because it feels very kind of disconnected from the franchise in a number of ways. And we'll go into those, some spoilery and some not. But the basic premise is that Chris Rock plays detective. What is his name?
Zeke Banks.
That's right, Zeke Banks. And his dad is played by Samuel L. Jackson, who plays Marcus Banks, who was formerly the captain of the precinct. And so, Zeke is set up to be kind of like the one clean cop in the dirty cop shop. And he doesn't get much help. But when his partner is killed in a Jigsaw-like fashion, Zeke demands to be on the case and is seeking help from his department, who don't have much use for him, but they get kind of needled into it. And then, of course, cops start getting bumped off right, left, and sideways. So one tends to think that maybe this Jigsaw killer or Jigsaw copycat killer has something in for the cops. And we find out, yes, they do. So anyway, when did you see this? Did you see it when it came out in 21?
Yeah, I think, and it's pandemic time, so you got to cast your mind.
Right.
Like it feels like you have to think back 10 years when it was really like 15 months or something. But yeah, I think I saw it on demand or rented it or whatever right when it came out, and I did a podcast about it. Not with you, sadly.
No, right.
But
I was just going to ask if you'd done a show and.
Yeah,
just shows what a terrible podcast person I am.
Oh, that it's my fault. I mean, we talked about pretty much all the other Saw movies for Scare-A-Thon a couple of years ago, which was great to revisit. And I just want to kind of pull over and say, revisiting that entire franchise, there were a lot of movies in the kind of second half of that I grew to appreciate with some distance, because for a long time it was like, if it's Halloween, it's got to be Saw. So it was a new movie every year. It got to be repetitive. Stepping back from a half decade or so and revisiting, like these aren't as strong necessarily as the original entries, but there's some good stuff here. But with Jigsaw and then now with Spiral, I know I will not be going back to revisit these movies. And it's just kind of, heartbreaking in a way, because there is something intriguing of like, okay, Chris Rock, from what I understand, it was sort of a passion project. He was really into the Saw movies. People found out he was going to be involved and was like, wow, this could be really interesting. Unfortunately, it is just as you described it. It's the Saw with Chris Rock in it. And it's not Chris Rock playing a detective so much as it's Saw featuring Detective Chris Rock.
Right. Yeah. It's very much Chris Rock as Chris Rock. Now I did dig around a little bit, and because I was like, well, Chris Rock must like really love the Saw movies to want to be in one.
That's what I thought.
No, well, it turns out it's a little different than that. He was doing his movie Top 5 that he, I think, directed, wrote, starred in. And there was a parody of a Tyler Perry movie called Boo. And turns out Tyler Perry went and made Boo, the Medea movie. And then they made another Boo movie starring Medea. And so Chris Rock is like, what the heck, folks? You can't go and like just make my movie that I came up with. And he was at a wedding, and he gave the head of Lionsgate, or one of the vice presidents or something, some higher ranking official in the Lionsgate corporation. And he said, what's the deal, man? Like, what are you going to give me now? And they kind of remembered him from that conversation and said, well, we've been kicking around the idea of a Saw movie. And Chris Rock is like, well, that'd be cool. So it's less that he was like a super fan and more that he was like, that'd be fun. Because Chris Rock is, and again, this article with the Los Angeles Times was talking about how he has been looking to kind of diversify his career as he gets older. He's 56 now. So he's been doing more of these dramatic parts. He was in a season of Fargo, and he's done a few kind of like less comedic, more dramatic. And that's what he was looking to do. He said, I would like to do a Saw movie that I can add some comedy to, but also it'll be a drama because, and I mean, and hear me out, I think it actually works in that regard, in that I buy Chris Rock as a cop because I like Chris Rock. So seeing Chris Rock in this scenario, I'm like, sure, I'll go along with that. I believe cops are capable of having snappy comebacks and, like having an investment. And I think Chris Rock is not a bad dramatic actor. The story itself, sure, maybe not the tightest sharpest tool in the tool shed. Dang it, I totally missed that one. You would not have missed that one, and I apologize. So anyway, back to you. So yeah, just go and like I understand you're not a huge fan of it, but what were some of your issues that you had?
It basically comes down to Chris Rock. I mean, I don't know, is he credited at all with screenwriting on this thing?
He came up with the story. I think he had something to do with it. Basically, in the article, he says that he was given license to say what he wanted as long as it didn't take the movie into a comedic direction, but that he was able to be comedic.
I get it. They released the wrong cut. Now it makes sense. Because, wow, I mean, like, okay, yeah, the writers are Josh Stolberg and Pete Goldfinger,
who also did Jigsaw.
Okay. So when we first see Chris Rock, I mean, we get kind of the cold Saw open of like, there's a person and they get into a trap and that person's death is going to become important later. But then when we first meet Chris Rock, he's joking around. He's part of this group who's doing a heist, and it turns out that heist might not necessarily be what it's supposed to be. I'm dancing around the spoilers.
No, that you could spoil that part.
Okay. He's working undercover with these people who are ripping off a hotel or something. But we open up and he's doing the Pulp Fiction style, like let's have some snappy dialogue about pop culture, but he's delivering it in a way that it just sounds like Chris Rock doing warm up for his stand-up. He's talking about like Forrest Gump and all this other business. Later on, he straight up says, "This is some New Jack City shit." I'm like, okay, there's meta, and then there's like, wow, really diving into that ego basket. I don't know if that's him or if that's the writers saying it's Chris Rock. We gotta make him happy. But again, and he does well in the climax where he has to be, tortured, not like actually tortured in one of the
Right.
devices, but just like kind of at the end of
Tortured
his
by the
rope.
situation he's in. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think he does pretty well there. It's just that everything else, there's a Chris Rock, just the way that he taught, it's very hard to pinpoint, but he has a specific way of speaking. I don't know, and I didn't watch Fargo, so I don't know if he actually has the range of performance so that even if he tries something new, if it's
Right.
going to come off as anything else but, oh, it's Chris Rock doing this thing.
Yeah.
Sam Jackson is the same kind of way. Like this entire time, I didn't see him as Sam Jackson. I saw him as, or I didn't see him as the detective, the former
Marcus.
police captain who's retired and he's got an antagonistic relationship with his son. I saw him as, I noticed that Sam Jackson is spending a lot of this movie sitting down. It's almost like they didn't quite pay him what's in your wallet money, where he gets up and does a lot of business. He's just like, he's sitting down at the captain's desk. He's sitting down on a stool in his son's apartment. Oh, wow. He's walking through the corridor. Maybe they gave him some points on the back end. It's Sam Jackson and Chris Rock in a movie that feels like someone wrote a Saw ripoff that never made it into development, and someone at Lionsgate, probably that same exec, said, "What if we slap a coat of Saw paint on it with Chris Rock and Sam Jackson? Voila."
Well, it's okay. So everything you said, I can't argue with any of it. I mean, I think you have to enjoy Chris Rock and you have to enjoy Sam Jackson doing their Chris Rock and Sam Jackson stuff. And what's interesting is that, like, it feels like, like when I was thinking, I'm like, okay, so this is a movie of Saw movie with a black protagonist. And I'm in favor of that. And I'm in favor of, like, it feels like this is the Saw movie for people who wanted to have a Saw movie with Chris Rock and Sam Jackson in it.
Who are those 10
That's
people?
my next question is like, who are those people? Like, when did that be like, what would make a really great Saw movie is to have Chris Rock and Sam Jackson. It's like, So, I mean, I'm just like, just from a marketing standpoint, I'm like, who is going to go and see this movie? Because the people who are huge Saw fans are going to be like, what are they doing? You got Chris Rock in your lead. That's not going to work. And then you have Chris Rock fans who are like, wait, he's not going to be funny. Is he going to be, is it like a scary movie type of movie?
Well, first of all, I just remembered you mentioned he's the black protagonist. We've already had that in the Saw franchise with Danny Glover's character, very early on. Now, he was sort of subsumed under like the Donnie Wahlberg character and, in the kind of the middle movies. But you bring up an interesting point. Who's going to go see Chris Rock in a Saw movie? I think the answer is everyone, if there's positive buzz around it.
Right.
Because I think there was a curiosity factor. If I had to guess, there were people who watched this movie and they told their friends, it's Chris Rock being Chris Rock.
Right.
Imagine if, Tom Hanks came from like The Love Boat and Bosom Buddies and these weird, early 80s comedies. And in the 90s, he started getting into more dramatic roles, and then he became Tom Hanks. What you don't see is Tom Hanks in Philadelphia reliving his part from Bosom Buddies.
Right.
He actually, I want to say like took acting lessons or whatever, but he dug deep and created a character that was right for the material. If Chris Rock had taken a note from what Danny Glover did with his performance and really turned in a hard-boiled cop performance and kind of like buried his rockisms, if he even has the range to do that. I don't mean any disrespect. There are some people who just can't do it. Right. Then I think people would have been like, you have to see the new Saw movie. Chris Rock is on a next level performance-wise. Yep. That can carry a mediocre Saw movie.
Well, I couldn't agree more because, yes, if this is very much the Chris Rock that we're familiar with, and it would have been interesting to see him genuinely trying to do something different. He's in a different medium. He's different. He's in a different genre than we're expecting, but he's not different at all. And I don't know the answer to that. I've also not seen Fargo, so I don't know if he has the chops to dial it down and actually, and also I get the sense that he was kind of the elephant in the room in that he could do whatever, gorilla in the room. Sorry, I mixed up my cliches there. But he's, the gorilla in the room who could do whatever he wanted and was basically given license to do so.
There's the 500-pound gorilla and the elephant.
Which one would win? I wonder. That's the next movie I want to see.
Is that Dumbo versus Kong? I don't know.
Dumbo versus Mighty Joe Young.
Oh, there you go. No, it definitely felt like kind of George Lucas syndrome, like who's going to tell him no?
Right.
But I think someone should have.
As a Saw movie, though, how does it work for you? I mean, I feel like it's kind of Saw light.
It is Saw light. I mean, some of the traps are interesting. You know, without getting too much, there's like a hot wax trap, there's a finger trap, and they're all very ooky, and a lot of it looks very practical, and that's kind of a cool effect. But if you just want to look at it from a story standpoint, and here's where you might want to put up your spoiler banner. I'm going to give you some notice
happy
there.
to do that.
You mentioned that Chris Rock is essentially the one good cop on this force, and he got a bad reputation and was even sort of allowed to be shot during a case, during a pursuit, because he had ratted out, one of the corrupt cops and had him, disgraced and sent up the river or whatever. The problem is usually those one good cop scenarios, the good cop is actually a cop that you want to be good and you want to be on your side. Chris Rock is like, oh, I'm going through a divorce and women suck and, there's no point to anything and life is terrible and I hate my dad and all this other stuff. Like, he's just such a miserable SOB that it's like, you might as well be a bad guy. But the other fundamental problem with the script, and this has nothing to do with Chris Rock or the performance from a storytelling level, his dad was the captain of the police force.
Right.
During a time which they refer to multiple times throughout the film, because it is sort of the point of the whole, the reason there's this copycat killer is that his dad oversaw a period of rampant corruption in the police department, of cops, breaking the law in order to bring down crime in the streets. And, since we are talking spoilers, he ends up shooting a guy who is going to inform on a dirty cop. One of the police officers shoots the guy who is set to testify. He kind of came to the door and said, so you're willing to testify? Like, oh yeah, I'm going to totally tell everything I know. So the guy's like, okay, fine. Shoots the dude. Turns out there was and
that's Chris Rock's partner.
Yeah. Turns out, as we find out later in the Saw montage, or the Sawntage, as I like to call it, at the end, that there was a little boy, that the victim's son was in the apartment, saw the whole thing. Chris Rock actually saw that he saw, my gosh, there's too many saws. And he gave him the shush motion, which was basically like, I know you just saw your dad get murdered, kid, but don't say anything because my partner would probably kill you as well.
Right.
But that act of protection saved the kid, but that kid grew up to become, to join the police force and set up this John Kramer style conspiracy to kill all the bad cops, and eventually get the one good cop to join him to take down other bad cops. Interesting idea, except we're supposed to believe, I think, that Zeke, the Chris Rock character, really had no idea that there was so much corruption in the police force and that his dad was directly tied to it. I mean, there's secrets, and then there's your dad being Darth Vader. It's like, no.
Right. That's fair. I mean, again, I it's not a movie I'm willing to defend. It is a movie. I'll go ahead and turn these off. It is a movie I'm willing to turn my brain off and enjoy. It's not. I mean, again, I feel like it's kind of, and I like the fact that it isn't a official Saw movie. It's it's from the book of Saw. It is in the same universe, but I think anybody who's having a Saw marathon doesn't necessarily have to include it, because it is very much, like it is a Saw adjacent. It is that Saw with Chris Rock in it. It was an interesting experiment, and I'm not a wholly successful one.
You are far kinder than I would be, but you have summed up my high level feelings very well.
Well, you had a whole show about it, so I figured, anybody who wants to go and visit Ian, you should, because he has an amazing podcast on the YouTubes and an audio form as well called Kicking the Seat, and I'll have a link below in the description. But yeah, any parting shots at the Saw?
No, I mean, I honestly hope it's dead and buried. I know it's a big brand, and Billy the Puppet, well, he was replaced by a pig puppet.
Yes, actually, before we leave, the fact that was weird for me I was like, wow, every time this pig is talking, it's so weird because I want to hear the pre-recorded, distorted John Kramer voice. And I'm like, why didn't they do that? Why didn't he use the John Kramer voice?
That's a great question because yeah, I know we're wrapping up and
No,
everything,
you're
but I
fine.
forgot I had blocked out the voice, but I wanted to talk about it. It's like, dear detective. Yeah.
Like,
Like
you
this
are,
weird distorted Midwestern, like talk about Fargo. Like this is, I don't know what was going on with that, but it wasn't, I can't even if you're in the trap and you're seeing that tape and
yeah,
you're
that's not
hooked up to all
scary.
this stuff, I could just imagine just that tape comes on. And even though you're horribly bound up and having your innards shredded, just going like, being your first reaction.
You shouldn't be doing this. Somebody else should be dubbing in your lines, Mr. Killer. Yeah.
It's like that bit from Wayne's World 2 where Mike Myers goes to the gas station and there's that extra who's like giving him directions. Like, look, I know this is a bit part, but can't we find someone better? And they bring in Charlton Heston.
Yeah. And I mean, it just, for such a piece of iconic Saw, like an iconic Saw element, for them to kind of dispense with that, I was like, oh, that seems like a misstep.
Yeah.
And, and I think, I don't know if it was meant, I don't know why that choice was made, because it just seems like you're not giving the fans what they want. And well, the fans are who is coming out to a 9th Saw movie.
Yeah. Or not.
or not. As I don't know how this film did, but I don't think it did well.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ian. This is Scare-A-Thon 2022, again, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. If this cause moves you in any way, and we certainly hope it does, please consider making a donation. No amount is too large or too small. And with that, we wish you, and we bewish you. We wish you a happy rest of the October season, and we'll see you come Halloween. Bye.